No one on Earth believed diplomacy would end this way. Not with applause, not with treaties, but with a wedding decree written in alien light. Ethan Cole stood alone inside the crystalline chamber of the Xyla Council. He was not a hero, not a general, not even a politician. He was a linguist, chosen because he could hear meaning where others heard noise. The war had lasted 3 years. Human fleets were outmatched, colonies burned, and Earth's final defense grid was failing. When the Zalari finally spoke of peace, humanity agreed to any terms. Any terms. The chamber shimmered as the council speaker revealed the condition. To bind our peoples, one human must join our royal bloodline through sacred union. The voice echoed inside Ethan's skull, bypassing his ears entirely. The chamber turned toward him. Ethan realized with cold horror that he had already been chosen. She arrived moments later. Lady Seraphil of the Zalari royal line. Her form was tall and luminous, her skin like silver moonstone, her eyes ancient and calm. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way. And she was 33 years older than him by Earth standards. Gasps rippled through the human delegation. Whispers followed, cruel and fearful. A forced marriage, an alien queen, a living treaty. Ethan's protest never reached his lips. The Zalari bond was not symbolic. It was biological, emotional, permanent. Seraphil studied him silently. There was no triumph in her gaze, only resignation. The ceremony occurred within hours. No rings, no vows, only the merging of energy fields under the council's watch. When the bond sealed, Ethan felt something inside him shift. Not pain, not fear, but a strange warmth, as if another heartbeat had aligned with his own. Earth celebrated peace, but Ethan felt like a prisoner wearing ceremonial silk. That night, aboard the Zalari flagship, Ethan finally spoke. "You did not ask for this either, did you?" Seraphil turned toward him slowly. "No, human Ethan. But fate does not ask, it only binds." He expected distance, coldness, superiority. Instead, he sensed sadness, deep and immeasurable. And somewhere beneath that sadness, hope. The days that followed were awkward and tense. Zalari customs were complex, their palace grown rather than built, walls breathing softly with living light. Ethan struggled to adapt. Every step reminded him that he was out of place. A human among beings who lived for centuries. Seraphil became his guide. She moved with patience, explaining rituals, history, and unspoken rules. Despite her age, she never spoke down to him. 33 years older. Yet she carried herself with the weariness of someone far older than numbers could express. One evening, Ethan finally asked the question burning inside him. "Why you? Why marry someone so much younger?" Seraphil paused beneath a canopy of glowing vines. "Because I am dying." The words struck him harder than any weapon. Zalari royalty carried a rare condition. Their life force dimmed faster when bound to power. The council believed a human bond might stabilize her energy. A gamble. A final attempt. "So I am medicine," Ethan said bitterly. "No," Seraphil replied softly. "You are choice within a cage, just as I am." That night, Ethan dreamed of her memories. A childhood beneath twin suns. Laughter long faded. A crown that felt heavier each year. He woke with tears he did not remember crying. Something was happening between them. Not romance, not duty, but understanding. Weeks passed. The bond between them deepened. Ethan began to feel Seraphil's emotions, subtle but constant. Then came the change no one expected. During a council gathering, Seraphil collapsed. Her light flickered violently. Alarms rang through the palace. Ethan rushed to her side, ignoring protocol. When he touched her hand, the bond surged. Energy poured from him, not draining but multiplying. The room filled with blinding radiance. Seraphil gasped as her form stabilized. Her heartbeat synchronized with Ethan. The council watched in stunned silence. This had never happened before. Human biology was amplifying Zalari life force. Not as medicine, but as a catalyst. Seraphil recovered within hours. Stronger, brighter, younger in ways no one could explain. The council feared what this meant. A hybrid bond capable of reshaping their species. Ethan, however, feared something else entirely. He was no longer just a treaty. He was changing history. The shift between them was undeniable. No longer strangers bound by obligation. They spoke freely, laughed cautiously, trusted slowly. Seraphil admitted her fear of outliving everyone she loved. Ethan confessed his terror of being remembered only as a symbol. The age difference faded in relevance. Their connection existed outside time. When threats arose from factions opposed to human influence, Ethan stood beside her, not as a husband by force, but as a partner by choice. During an assassination attempt, Ethan shielded her without hesitation. The bond flared again, repelling the attackers. In that moment, Seraphil realized the truth. This was not a sacrifice. It was evolution. For the first time in centuries, she felt alive without pain. And Ethan felt needed without being used. They chose each other. Finally, freely. Years later, peace endured. Human and Zalari children played beneath shared skis. Ethan aged as humans do. Seraphil aged more slowly now, balanced by the bond. When asked how peace was achieved, historians spoke of treaties and alliances. But whispered legends told a different story. Of a marriage meant as punishment that became salvation. Of an age gap that mattered less than courage. Of love born not from romance, but from shared survival. Ethan once asked Seraphil if she regretted the forced beginning. She smiled, touching his hand. Fate may bind unwillingly, but love decides what comes after. And no one, on any world, expected that. The universe does not change all at once. It shifts quietly, through moments that seem small when they happen, but echo forever afterward. Years after the bond stabilized Seraphil's life force, the consequences began to unfold. Not as war, not as rebellion, but as curiosity. Zalari scholars observed Ethan closely. They measured his heartbeat, his neural patterns, the resonance of the bond. What they found unsettled them. The bond was evolving. It was no longer simply sustaining Seraphil. It was rewriting the ancient limits of Zalari biology. Their people had always believed themselves complete, perfected by time. Yet now, a human presence had unlocked something dormant. A generation later, the first children were born from mixed unions. Not hybrids, but something else entirely. They carried the longevity of the Zalari, the adaptability of humans, and an emotional range deeper than either species alone. The council was divided. Some called it destiny fulfilled. Others whispered of contamination. Ethan heard those whispers. He heard them even when they were not spoken aloud. The bond had given him more than connection. It had given him awareness. One night, as the palace slept beneath starlight filtered through living glass, Ethan stood beside Seraphil on the highest terrace. He could feel the tension within her, restrained but present. "They are afraid," Ethan said quietly. "Yes," Seraphil replied. "Fear is the shadow of change." She rested her hand over his heart. Through the bond, he felt her memories stretch across centuries. The rise and fall of dynasties. Worlds claimed and lost. Promises made in desperation. "We were taught that survival required stillness," she said. "That to endure, we must never change." Ethan turned toward her. "Humans survived because we never stop changing, even when it hurts." Their bond pulsed softly, not violently as before, but rhythmically, like a shared breath. The next crisis did not arrive with fleets or weapons. It arrived as a message from the outer systems. An ancient civilization, long thought extinct, had awakened. They were older than the Zalari, older than recorded spacefaring history. And they had noticed the anomaly, a union between species that should not be compatible, a bond that altered entropy itself. They demanded Ethan, not Seraphil, not the Council, but the human who broke the pattern. Panic spread through allied worlds. To surrender Ethan might appease them. To refuse could mean annihilation. Ethan listened as leaders debated his fate. The words were familiar. Necessary sacrifice. Calculated risk. Greater good. He had heard them once before, when he was chosen as a groom instead of a soldier. Seraphil rose from her throne as the council argued. The chamber fell silent. "He is not an object to be handed over," she said. "He is not a resource, a weapon, or an experiment. He is my partner." Her voice carried authority forged by centuries of rule. But beneath it was something new. Defiance not born of duty, but love. "If they come," Ethan said calmly, "they come for us both." Seraphil looked at him, and for the first time since they met, she hesitated. "I have ruled worlds," she said softly, "but I cannot rule fate." Ethan smiled. "Neither could humanity, and we survived anyway." When the ancient civilization arrived, space itself seemed to bend. Their vessels were not ships, but moving geometries, unbound by conventional physics. They spoke not in words, but in probability. Their message unfolded directly within consciousness. "The bond you carry is forbidden. It destabilizes the long equilibrium. It must be unmade." Ethan felt their scrutiny like pressure on his bones. But Seraphil stepped closer, their energies entwining. "You speak of equilibrium," she responded. "But equilibrium is stagnation disguised as peace." The ancient beings recoiled slightly, as if surprised by resistance. They offered Ethan a choice: sever the bond and return humanity to isolation, or be erased along with all who carried his influence. Ethan did not answer immediately. Instead, he reached deeper into the bond than ever before. He felt Seraphil's fear, not of death, but of losing what they had built together. He felt the hopes of their people, human and Zalari alike. Lives intertwined because of one forced decision long ago. Then he spoke. "You believe the universe must remain as it was. But life does not exist to preserve order. It exists to create meaning." The bond flared not as energy, but as understanding. Something unexpected happened. The ancient beings felt it. For the first time in eons, they felt change within themselves. Possibility spread through their collective consciousness. Not destruction, but transformation. They withdrew without another threat, leaving behind silence and a universe forever altered. In the aftermath, Ethan collapsed. The strain had been immense. But Seraphil held him, anchoring his fading strength. "Do not leave me," she whispered. "I am not going anywhere," he replied weakly. "We still have a future to argue about." Years passed, then decades, then more. Ethan aged, his hair silvering, his body slowing. But the bond adapted again, sharing not immortality, but balance. He did not become Zalari, and Seraphil did not become human. They became something shared. When Ethan finally reached the end of his natural life, he did not face it with fear. Surrounded by children, allies, and worlds at peace, he took Seraphil's hand. "You once said fate binds unwillingly," he murmured. "But love decides what comes after." Seraphil's light dimmed as tears traced her luminous face. Yet the bond did not break. It transformed. Ethan's physical form faded, but his presence remained, not as a ghost, but as resonance, a gidding harmony within the bond itself. Seraphil ruled for centuries more, never alone, never unchanged. And when historians recorded the moment the universe truly shifted, they did not mark a battle or a treaty. They marked a marriage that began as a sentence and ended as the reason the stars chose to grow closer. Time did what it always does. It moved forward without asking permission. After Ethan's passing, the universe did not collapse into grief. It continued, but it carried his absence like a softened echo. Seraphil felt him everywhere, in the quiet moments before dawn, in the pulse of the bond that still resonated within her. Not as pain, not as loss, but as presence. The scholars called it residual harmonic consciousness, a phenomenon never recorded before. Ethan had not survived as a being. He had endured as influence. When Seraphil walked through the palace gardens, the living walls brightened. They responded to the bond, to the memory woven into her energy. Children born generations later asked about the human who changed everything. They did not ask about his battles or his sacrifice. They asked why he chose love when the universe demanded obedience. Seraphil answered them herself, not from a throne, but seated among them. He did not choose love, she would say. He chose honesty, and love followed. The alliance between species matured into something deeper. Borders became formalities. Worlds shared governance, culture, and purpose. Yet peace, as always, invited complacency. A movement arose among younger civilizations. They had never known war. They had never felt the terror of extinction. To them, unity felt imposed rather than earned. They questioned the bond legacy. They questioned Seraphil's long reign. And quietly, they questioned whether the human influence should ever have existed. Seraphil sensed the shift long before unrest surfaced. The bond still warned her, still guided her. One night, beneath a sky thick with unfamiliar constellations, she spoke aloud, though no one stood beside her. "What would you do, Ethan?" The answer did not arrive as words. It arrived as clarity. She remembered his patience, his refusal to command without listening, his belief that change must be invited, not enforced. So Seraphil did something no Zalari ruler had ever done. She stepped down. The announcement shook the allied systems. Panic followed admiration. Fear followed hope. She dissolved the monarchy, replacing it with a shared council representing every bonded world. Some called it betrayal of tradition. Others called it the final proof of Ethan's legacy. When unrest threatened violence, Seraphil appeared unarmed before the crowds. She did not glow with royal authority. She glowed with resolve. I was bound by fate once, she told them. But I learned that destiny can be rewritten. You are not children of peace. You are its guardians. The movement fractured, not through force, but through reflection. Years later, as Seraphal's energy began to thin at last, she felt the bond shift once more. Not weakening, preparing. On her final journey beyond the core systems, she traveled alone. Not out of sorrow, but purpose. At the edge of known space, where stars were still forming, she felt him more clearly than ever. Not memory, not echo, but invitation. When her light finally dispersed, it did not vanish. It spread. Across the void, a new stellar phenomenon ignited. A binary star system forming in perfect resonance. Its frequency, unlike any recorded before. Scientists struggled to explain it. Poets understood immediately. They named it the Bond. Travelers reported a strange calm when passing through its light. Conflict softened. Fear quieted. Children born under its glow exhibited heightened empathy. Not power, understanding. In time, the story became legend. Then lesson. Then foundation. A human once forced into marriage. An alien woman burdened by age and duty. A union meant to end a war. Instead taught the universe how to grow. And far beyond language. Beyond form. Beyond even memory. Two harmonies remained intertwined. Not as ruler and subject. Not as husband and wife. But as proof that even when fate begins as a cage, love can still teach the stars to listen.